Hillenbrand, aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. Well, we do have a quorum, and today we're going to receive the results of the community survey. I'll turn it over to County Manager Penny Post-Oak Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, good afternoon. We have with us today Chris Tatham with ETC Institute. He's the CEO of ETC Institute. And before I turn it over to him for the presentation, we have had the survey done by ETC since 2007. And we did every other year until 2015, and then we started doing every year a survey until 2020. And then we did a COVID one. I can't remember what month that was. And so now he's doing a full one again. And so we're excited for him to share the results with you. And he has started meeting with our executive leadership team, and we're going to continue to meet with him to dive down in the results. So we're glad to present this to you all today, and I'll turn it over to Chris.
Chris, good to see you. Glad you're here.
I don't think your mic's on.
Yeah, is it green?
There we go. Is that
All
good
right.
for everybody?
A little closer, maybe?
Bring it way over here. There
Yeah,
we go.
that's
So
good.
anyway, it is great to be back. I always love to present in my hometown, to my home community. And because not only do I get to share the results, I actually get to benefit from what you all do with the results. So anyway, it's great to be here. I love working with this county, your staff. If you're not familiar with our firm, we're actually based here in Olathe. But what you may not know is we now have offices all over the world. We have an office in India. We have an office in Africa. And we employ about 100 people overseas now, as well as the hundreds that we have here in the United States. So our firm is really committed to helping local governments gather input from residents to basically make better decisions. It's not the decision-making tool, but in reality, most of the time, you're only going to have a select few people show up to your public meetings, and they don't always represent the interests of the community as a whole. So today, I'm going to kind of walk you through how the survey was done. It's not a lot different than we've done in past years, but we have evolved with the way that people interact with one another. And so text, for example, is a new method that we use to reach out to folks in addition to email and mail and phone calls and all those other methods. Most people don't answer their phone anymore, so the way we used to do it has had to change as a result of that. Then I'm going to walk you through the results of the survey. The survey is designed around kind of several core areas. First, we look at some long-range planning issues. The next area looks at some of the key service, how well is the current customer service being delivered by different county departments. And then we look at some opportunities for improvement, and there's a few other issues like housing and things like that that I know you're interested about. So as far as the purpose of the survey, it really, when we first started doing it almost 2 decades ago, it was designed to provide an objective tool for what do residents think about the county. What do they think about priorities for the county, satisfaction with services, awareness and familiarity with those services. The reason it's done is we've actually did a survey last year, and we've done this about every 2 years, is we actually ask people nationally whether or not they've been to a public meeting in the previous year. And over the past 5 or 6 years, the average percentage of people that say they've attended a public meeting is around 6 or 7%. When they're then asked a follow-up question is, was the meeting really in the last year? The number drops to about 2 to 3%. And then of those 2 to 3% who say they went to a meeting in the last year, the number one reason they go is to get awards or recognition or see someone else get an award or recognition and then leave the meeting. Number 2 reason is they don't like the way you're doing something. Or number 3, they want you to do something new or change the way you're doing it. So at the end of the day, you are only hearing from about 1 to 1.5% of the people in the community. And most of those people are advocates for something. So if you don't have a tool like this, you might think you're doing terrible when you're doing great. You might think you need to go left when you need to go right. And so that's really, this is to help you make sure you're hearing from the vaster part of the population who may not have time or see the value of coming to a public meeting. In addition, the survey helps you see how things have changed over time, and we have some performance measurements so you can see how you stack up to other communities around the country. So the survey itself, our goal is to get at least 200 respondents from each of the commission districts. We anticipated the response rate declining from previous years because of COVID. It actually didn't. We continued to get a great response here in Johnson County of about 20% of the respondents. We are anticipating about a 15% response, which is the reason we ended up with 1,649, which is the most surveys we've ever had for one of these surveys ever. So it shows that people are still really engaged. Yes, Commissioner?
I just wanted to ask a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
There had been some concerns on Facebook that the the survey link was being sent out on Facebook, and I know that we had asked that question and had received the assurance from ETC that only people who had actually been contacted to participate, that their responses were going to count. Can you just?
Yeah, that's a great point if anyone had those concerns. If you do the survey online, we require you to enter your home address. We then match those addresses with people who were selected for the survey. So we did have people do the survey who weren't selected for it, but they're not included in this final number. In fact, there weren't that many. There were maybe 40 to 50 people who did it online, but we keep them, they're not part of the random sample, so if you didn't enter it, so if you entered an address in China, it didn't count, or if you were in China and you had an address here that didn't exist, it didn't count. So the bottom line, if you didn't put an address that was part of our random selected sample, it didn't count for part of these results. And so that's the way we protect the integrity of the sample. So at the end of the day, the results aren't perfect. They have an accuracy of about plus or minus 2.5% at the 95% level of confidence. And that just means if you did the survey 100 times, you get these same results within about 2.5% or less. So it's pretty accurate. And if your commission levels, or for your commission district levels, it's about plus or minus 7% or less. So I know a lot of you may be interested in what your particular constituents think of different issues. The other thing that's new this year, and I'm going to show you some screenshots at the end that aren't in your packet, and we've developed an online data analytics dashboard, which allows you to go online and actually see the results of this year, and we'll be adding previous surveys so you can see how things have changed over time, how different groups respond to different, and I'll give you a couple slides toward the end. And if you're just wondering, well, where do the people live? We don't actually give you their addresses, but we do drop a dot that's near their home, and you can see from this map that we have good representation from the entire county. In addition, when you look at the demographics with regard to the racial composition of the respondents, the gender, and other factors, it's generally comparable to census estimates. So we feel really good about the composition of the sample, and also in light of doing the survey many years. This year's survey is similar to previous surveys, so we don't see shifts in the results because the sample is different. It's, we can believe and conclude that the results are really changes in people's perceptions of things. So with that, I'm going to, before I get into all the details, just tell you the results are really good this year. And it may surprise you, given that perhaps many of your public meetings have not always been as perhaps supportive or positive about the leadership or the decisions the county's been making. But the bottom line is the survey results suggest that the county's definitely moving in the right direction. One of the first things that we've been asking now for a couple surveys, we introduced these questions last time, was what are the long-range priorities as far as what impacts quality of life in the county? And you'll see that we ask everything from well-maintained roads, safety from crime, healthcare access, and so forth. And you'll see really rounding out the top four when you just look at the percentage of people who say it's very important. Public education, healthcare access, safety, and well-maintained roads are at the top of this. Everything's important to somebody. So if you go down the list, you'll see that public transit, there's still a significant percentage of people that say it's very important. And when we ask people to constrain their choice, in other words, limit the number of choices they had to just 4, that's what you see on this next chart. And you'll see that the items at the top, public education, safety, healthcare access, and well-maintained roads are the top 4 still. But you'll see that there has been some shifts which are consistent with what we're seeing nationally because of COVID. Things like social justice and equity, healthcare access, and public education have actually become higher priorities compared to a couple years ago, and decreases have been seen in well-maintained roads, traffic flow, and safety and low crime. It doesn't mean that traffic flow and well-maintained roads aren't that big of a deal. In fact, you'll see that well-maintained roads is still the 4th highest rated priority overall, but it has declined from where it was before. People tend to be a little more concerned about issues that frankly have received a lot of attention over the last couple years. One thing I did find interesting is public education's always been a perceived strength of this county. In a lot of communities, perceptions of the local schools have really failed. But the fact that it actually went up as being a bigger reason for people wanting to be here and having an impact suggests that all in all, though there were a lot of divisive stances on how the local school districts respond, the average person is more likely to think it's more important now than before. In addition, the second thing that we're looking at is what are the roles for the government? And we've asked people what they think the most critical roles are for Johnson County government over the next 10 to 20 years. And you can see again, the list is shown before you. You'll see there were a few things that have risen as a priority, ensuring the availability of health and human services. Again, not a surprise. We've seen that nationally, very similar things. Environmental sustainability has increased, along with communication and engagement with the public. Areas that have decreased from where they were really pre-COVID are road systems and maintaining high-quality emergency services. Again, doesn't mean that they'll stay there forever. I would anticipate over the next few years we'll start to see infrastructure and things that rise again. But in the interim, when we're looking at the first survey you've done since before COVID, things like health and environment have become more important as a result. But the number one item here was the number one item last time and still is, and that's making sure that there's necessary health and human services are available. It just got a lot more important compared to where it was last time. And when I shared this last time, I think that might have been a surprise to some of the folks. It was actually the number one role, I guess now 2 years ago, and it has risen to become an even more important role since we did the survey this time. As far as the reasons people live in Johnson County, this was also one of the things that we're tracking just so you can understand how life is changing and what's impacting life. When we ask people the reasons they decided to live in the county, you'll see that feelings of safety and low crime are at the top, but you can see it got a little less important this time compared to last time. Quality of public schools is number 2, as it was last time, but it got more important. Parks and trails actually became more important compared to last time. It was in the middle of the pack, it still is, but it's the other area that we saw a significant change. Most of the other items stayed about the same for the reasons that people decided to live here. And when we ask people why they plan to stay here, it's pretty much the same set of issues. Feeling safe, people want to make sure that the county continues to feel, or they continue to feel safe, that public schools are good. And you can see the third one is family relatives live here. But those, again, COVID, I think the big takeaway from here, a lot of people think it dramatically changed our society, and it did in a lot of ways, but a lot of the core fundamentals about why people came to Johnson County, why they plan to stay here, what they think is important, and what they think the role of the county government is, has not really changed that much. Though there are some changes, overall it's very similar to where it was before the pandemic. So with that, I'm going to transition to our next topic, which is perceptions of safety. And this is something you can really be proud of. This is one of the things the county has done extremely well, because I've lived here a long time, and generally I've always felt like this is a county that people feel safe to live in. But as the county's grown, has become more diverse, many communities have found that being a challenge to keep perceptions of safety at the same levels that they perhaps did when they were smaller. But Johnson County's actually seen their ratings for safety increase year after year after year. In fact, one of the things that you may not notice is going all the way back to an early survey we did before this survey was started on a regular basis. We asked people about their safety in their county parks on a park survey that we did, and you can see only a little over half of the respondents felt safe in parks at that time. Now you see it's almost 9 out of 10. And when you look at other things like people's perceptions of their safety in neighborhoods at night, overall feeling of safety and in their neighborhoods during the day, all of those areas have continued to rise after many, many years. And so that's something that the county should feel very good about, as we've always been perceived to be as a good place to live, generally perceived to be as a safe place to live, but the numbers have gotten even better as the county has grown in population and become more diverse, which is something to be very proud of. In addition, when we look at how the county stacks up nationally, you'll notice that the perceptions or the ratings for safety in Johnson County are head and shoulders above the rest of the country. You notice here the dark blue bar shows the results for Johnson County for each of those areas of safety. The items in the red are the national average for all communities. And if you're wondering where do we get that, we do research in over 1,000 cities and counties across the country. We also do large national surveys ourselves with regional subsamples, and that's where that data comes from. And you can see the ratings for other large communities. And in each case, Johnson County is not just a little bit above, substantially above. When you're at 87% for your county parks and the national average is only a little over half, That's something you're doing that's exceptional. And what's interesting is if you look at the previous chart, if I go back here, you were pretty much average back in 2005, assuming the standard was the same back then. We don't have it from that far back, but it just shows how much things have changed over the past 20 years in a very positive way for this county. As far as how you stack up to other communities, you might wonder, well, how do our services stack up, and how does the perception of our county stack up, especially after COVID? A lot more good news here as well. When it comes as a place to live, raise children, to work, and to retire, you'll notice that Johnson County is head and shoulders above the national and other large community average. And it's particularly, look at the as a place to live. Right now, half the people who live in their community in most places around the country are giving their communities a decent rating for a place to live. It's 98% here in Johnson County. And I think to remember that is when you actually have meetings or you see things on national television, people in Johnson County view the world very differently than the rest of the world. So sometimes what we see on national news or international news isn't necessarily true of our county when 98% of the people feel good about living here, when it's only about half the people in most other communities. Same thing is true as a place to raise children and as a place to work and, of course, as a place to retire. But most people don't say, hey, I want to go to Kansas in the winter and retire there. But frankly, compared to a lot of other communities that are in places you think would be retirement focused, Johnson County does extremely well. In addition, when it comes to perceptions of the county with large communities, the image of the county, the quality of public safety services, overall quality of services. I won't read this entire list to you because I feel like a broken record that you're setting the standard, setting the standard, setting the standard. But I do want to highlight a couple things that you might sometimes sense that you're not doing well or receive a lot of criticism for. First is the value of taxes. Nobody loves paying taxes. In fact, on average, only 1 in 3 people in most communities actually give positive ratings at 34% for the value of taxes. Johnson County is almost 30 points above that at 60%. So 6 out of 10 people actually feel like they get good value for their taxes. In addition, the overall quality of services, which is perhaps the best macro indicator. At the end of the day, overall, how well does the county provide services? 82% of residents give positive ratings. Nationally, it's just 51%. So you're 31% above the national average. Remember, your margin of error in the survey is 2.5%. So this isn't just a statistical anomaly. This is truly phenomenal performance. And again, you can see the other ratings. You're really setting the standard, especially when things even comes with the customer service of your employees, which a lot of communities have struggled with during COVID. You're at 69% compared to just 41% in the average community. So you're doing a great job across the board. Sure.
Good story. I was last fall walking at Cedar National Park, and this bike I thought was going to hit me drives by me and says, "Hey, Commissioner Bass," and he goes, "My tax dollars at work. Good job." I'm like, okay.
There you go. So there's that 6% or 60% that's feeling good about it. So. Yeah. So kind of continue on. Just now we're going to get into some of the specific services. I've been focused kind of on long-range planning, roles of the government, how things have changed kind of at a big picture level. Let's get into some of the specific county services, because the other piece that we do is we actually have people indicate whether they're familiar with each service, and then if they are familiar with the service, we have them rate them. So everybody who's rated actually indicates they at least believe they know what's going on with that service. And when you look at the ratings, they're rated on a scale of, again, 5 to 1. A 3 is not a I don't know. It is basically it's okay. And so sometimes the less often you use things, or the less you may think you're familiar, but you don't use it that much, you're like, well, I guess that service is okay. I haven't heard anything really great. Haven't heard anything bad, so I'm not upset with it, but you don't give people a 4 or 5. So you'll see a lot of the services have people who are really giving more of it's an okay or that gray. The negatives are the piece that we really want to look at, because when it's negative, that suggests that a person has had a real bad experience and there's some hostility in that response. And then the piece that we really like are the dark blue, because those are people who have had really good experiences. And you'll see things like at the top, the Johnson County Parks and Recreation District, the library system, the emergency preparedness systems that we have in place, the emergency medical and ambulance service, and even the election office. You can see those all have a lot of dark blue. Even public health, you'll see on the list there, has over 1 in 5 people giving positive ratings, and that's after COVID, and so keep that in mind. The thing that I thought was interesting, though, is the highest rated services where I just mentioned. The lowest rated services, there's not a lot of negativity there. A lot of that is just more, I know transit is out there, but I don't use it, so I assume it's okay. So these aren't people thinking the service isn't good or necessarily bad, but that's one of the reasons we typically see a lot more neutral in these kinds of ratings. When we look at the trends from last time, this is where there's a lot to be proud of. In a period where people really could have been very disconnected from the delivery of their local governmental services, Johnson County really stepped up in most of the places. You'll see this first chart. I'm going to show you 2 charts here. The first one shows kind of the first half of the services that were rated highest, and you'll see that when I was here a couple of years ago, I guess 2 surveys ago, Member Motor Vehicle Division had seen some big decreases. The state had done some changes. Well, you not only fixed them, even during COVID, you made it even better. So you're getting the best ratings you've had for a really long time, if perhaps in history for motor vehicle divisions. They're up significantly. Wastewater is also up significantly. Public Works, Stormwater, and Parks and Recreation. So congratulations to all of those departments. They've all seen statistically significant improvement. In addition, we did see some areas that have been decreases, but a lot of it had to do with shutdowns and things like that with the courts and judicial system, which are pretty much in line with what we've seen in other communities across the United States. You can see the district attorney's office, sheriff's office, and district courts were the areas that dropped the most. None of them dropped dramatically, but those were the areas that we saw the biggest decreases, and they're shown here on this next chart where you can see the percentages that dropped. For example, for the courts was at 48, and you can see that it dropped to 45. So these weren't huge decreases. The sheriff's department dropped from 56 when we did the survey back in 2019 to 52 now. And you can see the Johnson County District Attorney's Office has seen a decrease as well. But all in all, the majority of the ratings have improved. And when we look at aggregate overall, how the county has changed, the overall composite index has improved. So a lot to celebrate given a difficult couple years with COVID. Last thing, I just want to share some of the specific performance measurements. We don't have them for every department, but for the ones that we do, you can see that Johnson County is definitely setting the standard, probably not a surprise, but in Parks and Recreation, it was setting the standard before. It's improved and gotten even better. The library system, you can see, is setting the standard significantly above the national and regional average. EMS and ambulance service is above the average. Wastewater has seen improvement. That's one of the areas which is now above the national average. The public works, you can see, is dramatically higher than particularly other large communities, as well as stormwater. The one area Johnson County lags behind compared to other communities is the public transit system. You can see that's a function of not people being upset, because this is a function of the percentage of people who give positive ratings. So this doesn't necessarily mean there's a problem, because when you look at this chart previously, there aren't a lot of negatives for transit. It's just that's the area that tends to get lower ratings when we look at the percentage of 4s and 5s. So with that said, you might say, well, what should we do? That's great information. We're moving in the right direction. What should we focus on? In order to help you do that, we ask residents not just how satisfied they are, but we also ask them to rate what they think the top priorities for the county should be moving forward. And you can see this list in descending order is the percentage of people who picked each service as one of their top priorities for the county to provide. You can see emergency medical and ambulance services is the most important service the county should provide according to residents based on the percentage who picked it as one of their top choices. Public health is next, the election office is next, and Parks and Recreation kind of round out the top 4. When we look at the importance in light of the current level of satisfaction, we're able to identify opportunities for improvement. And this is a really busy slide, but I give it to you so you can spend hours later on looking at all the numbers. But I'm going to highlight those key things for you as we look at it. As far as opportunities for improvement, based on how satisfied residents are and the relative importance residents place on these services, aging and human services, mental health services, and public health services are the top 3 opportunities for improvement. Those are things you want to communicate, perhaps invest more in. Those will be the things that impact overall satisfaction the most moving forward. You'll notice that aging and human services was second back in 2020. Mental health went from first to second, but public health services moved from sixth to third. And some of that's a result of the COVID pandemic. Yeah, Commissioner?
Can I ask so when they want to see them improve, was there any questions of what, or were they able to say what they would like to see improve?
We don't drill down into that. That would be a follow-up. Sometimes we've done follow-up surveys if there's four priorities. Like we've done surveys for Parks and Recreation, stormwater, and that's when we tend to
Okay.
drill down. This is a little bit more of the
That's
macro.
another job, okay.
Yeah, the big, So the other opportunities, perfecting environmental natural resources, the sheriff's office, and developmental supports kind of round out the top 6 opportunities moving forward. For your interest, I included what the top improvements were in 2020, which you can see there in the black box. You'll see mental health services was top. It's now second. Human services is now first. Motor vehicle dropped. And this is one of the things you think something's a real issue, but then people get more satisfied, and guess what? They're less concerned about it. And that's a good example of that. Yeah, Commissioner?
Yes, the question I have about this chart is, when it says opportunities for improvement, and I know in the past, sometimes in the past, the question was, where would you like to see more resources dedicated? So to me, that's a little bit different.
It is, and it's partly because of what we've seen in just the nature of it. In some cases, it is more investment. In some cases, it's education. And so we used to just say, these are the ones you should invest more resources in. Now we found that sometimes people don't know that the resources are there. They don't know about the programs, and so they're less satisfied, but if they knew what was being offered or knew that things were being expanded. So it's, when I say the opportunities for improvement, these are the areas that you should do more communication and or invest more, but in many ways, you know what your current levels of investment are better than the average resident. And so if you see situations, you can then compare this to the percentage of people who are familiar with the service. So and I'm going to share with you the dashboard we have in a little bit, which will allow you to drill down and better determine, is this a communication issue or is it a specific group of people that perhaps we need to reach out to more? And that's one of the nice things about being able to drill down like that now. But bottom line, the biggest probably themes that you're seeing change is from the public's perspective because of the pandemic. Health issues, environmental issues, social justice related issues have become more important. So if the county isn't emphasizing or at least sharing what it's doing in those areas, you're not taking advantage of the concerns or basically letting people know that you're in touch with their concerns. On the other hand, things like roads, it doesn't mean you stop paving and taking care of your roads, but those have faded a little bit. So if you're putting up front and center what you're working on and everything you're telling people about is the next overlay in the next project, and you're not talking about any of the health things you're doing, you're missing opportunities to enhance overall satisfaction with the county, if that makes sense. So,
Thank you.
all right, last topic, and then I'll show you the dashboard. One of the things that we ask people is how important do they think it is for the county to provide safety net services to low-income individuals and families? And you can see the percentage of folks who think it's important has stayed about the same, but the shift in very important has been pretty dramatic. So the percentage you think is very important has gone from 34% to 43%. The combined percentage of importance is about the same, and the percentage that are not important has stayed about the same. But of those who think it's important to do, they're even more likely to think it's very important now than they were before the pandemic. In addition, we modified the question with housing. You might remember 2 years ago, we just asked people affordability, what they thought about the affordability of housing, and most people gave negative ratings. The question was adjusted this year, the availability of affordable housing for your family. We got a much different response when we actually asked people, kind of given their circumstances, what they think, versus them just judging housing prices in general. And we typically get a negative result when people just judge housing prices in general. But you can see in this case, we had about 1 in 4 people that from their family's perspective, they gave negative ratings, but 2 out of 3 actually gave positive ratings. And we asked for the quality of housing for their family as well. You can see that only 7% when it came to quality gave negative ratings. So there definitely are people in the county. The mapping data and also the socioeconomic data in the survey should help the county perhaps pinpoint the groups that are having the most struggles with the housing issues. The other question that we looked at is the percentage of residents who thought the county should devote additional resources to different groups or different areas. And you can see everything we have from mental health services. This gets a little bit more to the dollar investment from the specific decisions you're making. And you can see, all in all, things didn't change a lot. People who thought you should devote more resources basically said almost the same thing a couple years later. The areas that did change, though, you'll see housing services was up 7% from last time, from 22 to 24. Safety net services was up 6%, you can see, from 24 to 30. And the homelessness issue was also up 6% from 34 to 40. So overall, people are a little more likely to support additional investments, but it did not significantly change in most areas, with those three exceptions compared to the last survey. So that's all of the topical stuff. It's all available to you, or will be available to you, for your commission districts. We'll have it by race, ethnicity, age, whatever you'd like. But to give you a sense for the way we're helping the county digest the data and make it more accessible to decision makers, is we are now developing dashboards. So almost all of ETC's surveys now are put online into a dashboard that you can just go and play around with the data. So I'm not doing a live demonstration. These are just some static charts, but you'll be able to go in and see all the results for the county's performance in different areas. You can look at the demographics. You can pull up maps and actually see the maps, and the maps will actually let you see how things changed by location from last time to this time. So if you actually want to zoom in and say, one of the things that we found, for example, last year with Oklahoma City, is their overall quality of life rating went up by 1%. And everybody's like, yay, that's awesome. But what happened in their different commission districts, it went up by 9, 10, and 11% in some commission districts, and it went down by 7, 8, and 9% in others. So within the city, there were some dramatic differences at the very sub-level or sub-area level, even though the overall numbers went up. So this will be helpful for you to do. In addition, the benchmarks, you'll be able to see how the county compares in different areas, along with investment priorities. That opportunities for improvement I was mentioning before, you can actually see that not just for the county, you can see it by your commission district, you can see it for people by their different ages. So if you're trying to help out folks who are seniors, you can take a look at what they consider to be some of the top priorities, or people who are perhaps minority groups or others that you may be serving. So this is just a little bit of what they look like. This is kind of the breakout of the data. This specific one is for Johnson County Motor Vehicles Division, and you can kind of see here, if you look at it, the second set of bars from the top in the middle shows by age, and the older you get, the more satisfied you are with motor vehicle services. So people, little things like that, you'll be able to take a look at the data. In addition, if you want to be able to break the data down and see those top priorities for different groups, you can come to this page, and then you'll see there's a place at the top where you can filter things. You can click there and then actually see it for specific groups, certain commission districts, whatever you'd like. That'll be available to you as well. You're going to be able to generate maps. Right now it's set up for commission district. We're going to add functionality for other levels that the county might lead, whether that be zip code, whether it be by city, whatever the county needs, whether there's different stormwater service areas, whatever those things might, so you can actually see how things change from last time to this time. So that's coming. And then, of course, you'll be able to see how the county stacks up in a wide range of areas, both the regional norms. You can even see, if you want to say, how do we stack up against California? You'll be able to go in and look at, we have 10 different regions in the United States that you can look at. So with that, I know I've presented a lot of information, and I've been talking nonstop, or almost nonstop, for half an hour. But I do want to help you take away from this is that I know it's been a hard year for all of you, and as one of your constituents, I guess, in the county, greatly value the fact that people like you are willing to step up and lead during crises like this. And I know a lot of times you don't feel appreciated, but hopefully when you see the results of a survey like this that actually do show things are getting better, people are satisfied with what you're doing, they think the county is generally moving in the right direction, hopefully that's reassuring to you that despite the challenges that you are doing a good job in doing what you think is best for the residents. As you see, the county is setting the standard in all sorts of areas, too many for me to name right now, but things have changed a little bit. Health is a little more important, environmental issues, and social justice. But keep in mind, I believe things will continue to return back to normal the more months we get past the pandemic. I know we're still in the middle of it, but just be reassured that we're seeing those trends return to normalcy in most of the work that we're doing. So with that, congratulations to you, congratulations to staff for getting through a very difficult couple years and doing it extremely well in the midst of seeing many communities not do so well. It's nice for me to come to a presentation like this with good news, because that hasn't always been the case the last couple years. So with that, I'll stop, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chris, the additional breakouts that you mentioned by district, et cetera, when will those be available, do you think?
Probably in the next couple weeks. I'll probably have them by the end of the month. The dashboard should be finalized next week. I'm going to then work with staff, let them know. So I'd say the end of the month at the latest.
All right. Other questions? Ms. Hensley?
Yes, thank you again, Chris, for this presentation. Something I think that we've all struggled with in the past, that it seems like it's a little less problematic this time, is people's confusion about who actually provides which services. And that's really great news about the DMV, because I know that's been one of the areas we were concerned about in the past. Now it's DMV, it's not driver's license. But in terms of the safety, feelings of safety, I'm looking at the high rates of safety it's on slide 16, in your neighborhood during the day and in your neighborhood at night. And I think, for the majority of people in Johnson County, that's their local police department that provides that kind of law enforcement in the cities. So I just want to give them kudos for the local police departments. They should take pride in those feelings of safety.
That's great, and you'll notice that the county parks is an area you've made a huge
Yes.
change. And when we get to the maps, which are gonna be at the very end, I didn't pull it up because the entire county was in dark blue, so it was sort of like, didn't tell a much of a story other than people feel safe everywhere. But you'll be able to drill down to different things and kind of tell, is there an area? And we may have a layer that's just unincorporated versus incorporated. That may be helpful for you on some of these issues, so you can see what people who live outside city limits, how they rate different things. And that's probably something we could add when we finish the mapping functionality of the dashboard.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Chairman.
Ms. Allenbrand?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. This is exciting, and County Manager, you should be excited, and what a great job by the staff. And now that we're in budget, working through the budget, there may be 4 or 5 departments that may be coming up for some more funds since our rate is so high. But thank you. It's nice hearing some good that's being done, so I really appreciate it.
Mr. Myers?
So, in speaking to what you were just talking about as far as parks, the example that I can give is that we have added a lot of security cameras and parks police to the force, and I think that's a validation that those types of things are hopefully, again, paying dividends, which I believe that's true, because that's what we're also hearing from residents when I speak to them in person. But I think that's an example of how that may have helped.
Well, I don't remember what numbered slide it was on, but parks and libraries have always consistently been in the top 4 or 5 of interest to citizens, and that's still the case, so.
A lot of that is just the utilization. Sometimes what you'll see is things that are used by more people tend to be higher priorities, and that's natural. And so it doesn't surprise me. It's something we see in most communities, that services that are used by lots of folks oftentimes get higher priorities because more people are selecting them as a priority because they affect more people directly.
Right, okay. Other questions? Ms. Fast?
Yeah, when I turn in the notebook, like on page, like 48, 49, and then when it says number, does that mean the number of people who made that as their top choice?
Yeah, if you see it I don't have it in front of me,
You
but
have like, it just,
Yeah.
okay, it's like public education, it says 30% and then 500, so 500 people.
that would be 30% of 1,600. The sample, I think we had 1,650, so that, yes, that would be correct.
Are we going to share this with our school districts? I think it's important for them to see. Is that possible? I mean, to see how important schools are. And this was taken in the heart of the pandemic, right? In January?
We finished it up just a couple months, in February, it was finished in early February, so.
We will make this available, Jody, I think on our website and to our employees. We're going to send out information to our employees today and tomorrow, and then make it available for the community. I don't know if the school districts do their own surveys with you?
Some do, usually when they are going to bond issues and things like that, we tend to do surveys.
Very
But,
good.
Not we don't tend to do a survey like this every year for most of the school districts.
Yeah, I just think it's really, they've had a rough 2 years.
They have too.
Love to see
Yes.
that they're still very valuable.
We can do that. We can do it directly.
Okay. All right. Well, again, Chris, thank you very much. A good job, and we'll continue to await the additional breakouts. So
Good.
appreciate it very much.
Great to
Thank
see you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our committee of the whole, so we are adjourned. And, 6 o'clock at the Central Resource Library for the joint meeting with the library board. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.